Madam Chairwoman, I rise in opposition to the underlying bill and the provision in this bill that I think is simply plain highway robbery, plain and simple. Once again, my friends on the other side of the aisle are ignoring an opportunity to invest in our infrastructure, to create more jobs, and to build a modern 21st century system of transportation that utilizes our highways, our air transportation system, and yes, our rail in the state of high-speed rail systems that are a part of America's future. Now, I support, like I think the majority of my colleagues do, providing the funding for the Mississippi Delta. We should and we must, as we have with every area that has experienced a disaster over the history of our nation. But there are other ways to provide that funding. In May of this year, Secretary Ray LaHood, a colleague of ours, a Republican, announced that $368 million of our tax dollars would go to California to invest in the San Joaquin Valley to construct the nation's first true state-of-the-art high-speed rail system. It's a system in California that the people support. In 2008, Californians went to the polls and voted overwhelmingly for a $9 billion bond measure to construct high-speed rail that will create hundreds and thousands of jobs throughout the state and create economic opportunities not only in the San Joaquin Valley but throughout California. But this provision steals that money and the promise of new jobs right from the hands of the people that it's intended to benefit. The Great Recession hit my region of the country probably harder than almost any other place in America, with double-digit unemployment levels that exceed 20%. Too many people can't find jobs to keep a roof over their head or to afford a decent, healthy diet. But at a time where everyone in Washington says we should be focused on job creation, this provision is the only one I can see that's about job destruction. High-speed rail will create over 600,000 construction jobs over the life of the project over the next 10 to 20 years in California. But this provision says no. High-speed rail will create 450,000 permanent jobs over the next 25 years. But this provision just says no. High-speed rail will spur economic development by connecting our San Joaquin Valley with the Bay Area and Southern California to create a system that will provide high-speed rail for 80% of California's population. But this provision just says no. High-speed rail will improve our air quality and reduce traffic that clog our freeways. Of course, this provision just says no. High-speed rail is proven to be a smart investment over the 5 decades that it's been developed in Europe and Asia. But this provision says no to America, no to California. High-speed rail will ensure that California is competitive well in the 21st century. But this would attempt to block that area to move into the next phase of a 21st century system of transportation. The people of California want high-speed rail. They voted for it and the jobs that it will create. But this provision, of course, just says no. Now, we've talked about our current financial situation, and it is difficult times for America. There is no doubt about that, and we must focus on our deficit, and we must come together in a bipartisan fashion. But I submit any of you to tell me that we have a more difficult time today than we had in the 1860s, when our nation was being torn apart by the Civil War, in which inflation was running rampant, in which deficit spending made our situation today look tame by comparison, and in which we had the first issue of paper money, in which a lot of people doubted the credibility of that paper currency. Yet, we had a great Republican president, the emancipator, during that time in our nation's history when our country was being torn apart, who had boldness and who had vision and decided we were going to build a railroad across the country and invest in our nation even though we were in that Civil War. And that's what he did. So this provision attempts to take on an effort, notwithstanding the difficult financial challenges that we have, but to, in essence, say what President Lincoln said in the 1860s, we can do better. We can build a transcontinental railroad. President Obama believes that we can get ourselves out of this financial situation by working together and at the same time invest in our nation's infrastructure, just as President Eisenhower did in the 1950s when he decided to embark upon the effort to build an interstate freeway transportation that we all benefit from today. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask that we pass this provision was slipped into law, that we defeat this provision, and that we keep our faith to the voters of California.
For what purpose?